you were the best in the game. You were a fucking savage.
Now watch this man. He has perhaps the most unorthodox style and technique that you have seen, but my, is it effective.
Run, his best run of the season.
If anybody rides the risk, it is Miller. Look at this, a high line, now into his tuck.
Has always been, oh, the skis lost. Miller's gonna go, no, he is up. Seconda mitt, men fatt efter planen, jag vann. Bode Miller, fantastic.
No way, he dives over the Zielschuss.
Another remarkably acrobatic display by Bode Miller. I mean, it's extraordinary when you watch these things that he can do.
Classic Bode Miller.
And in comes Bode Miller, looking for victory number 2 on the World Cup Tour. Bode Miller makes it 2 out of 2.
Atop it, Bode Miller with gold.
At the same time, you were always thinking about the world in your own unique way, and you were not in any way shut off to what might be called the spiritual aspects of the world or the non-physical dimensionality of things. That was like such a refreshing thing for me, because I basically placed those two things in a category. Either you perform and achieve, or you're out there listening to what the trees are going to tell you. And like listening to what the energy of the rocks are and thinking about the philosophy of things. Like I remember some of your, competitors, they were a little more simple.
Yeah, pretty linear. Yeah,
I
I don't think they're inherent. Actually, I think at the best level, they are totally integrated, because one actually feeds the other and vice versa.
I think they can really amplify themselves. I think that's one of the reasons why you were, one of the best that ever lived.
Yeah, it's come up a bunch, is because if you look at my raw material that I was working with, it doesn't behoove a world beater. I can compete, but there's just always guys bigger, stronger, faster, better lineage, better, biology. But that is, I think, was the key to it, was that I was using other sources to amplify, sort of call it my physical. If I'd gone that linear path that you're talking about, where it was like, focused on the goal, focused on the next step, this incremental things of like, climbing your way through an elite sport or whatever it is. And I could see pretty early that not only was it not my culture, it wasn't my upbringing, it wasn't my nature, but it was also, I was intelligent enough athletically to see that also wasn't going to lead to success. My success, sure, it could have been, had I been raised differently or whatever, I could, but my success would have been self-analysis, and I probably would have topped out somewhere around, the top few in America, but never had the ability to compete internationally. Just that was just where my physical and technical abilities kind of were. But the fact that I was able to bridge into other energy sources, other modalities to amplify what it was I could do within my sport was definitely the key. I mean, I think everybody, even people who maybe aren't so into that side of the space, would say that like there was something unusual about the way that I did it, because it wasn't just the same way everyone else was, and that was it was appealing to people, I think, in a more intrinsic way, where it wasn't just watching somebody win, it was watching somebody do something that was definitely different, and using multiple modalities to try to accomplish a goal that was typically approached in a pretty linear fashion.
One of the aspects that I always remember that I think is worth sharing that you really imprinted on me, I remember one day I was whining to you that I had a song stuck in my head, and you just look at me and you go, "Well, get it out." I'm like, "Bro, I just told you it's stuck." It's stuck. Did you not miss the verb there? It's stuck. Yeah. And you're like, "Well, who controls your mind? Like, who's sticking it?"
Yeah, exactly. And it is.
And I was like, "Fuck." And that was like a big lesson that you shared with me.
Yeah, and it takes, right. And that's probably, I will celebrate that, and also demonstrate my what do you call it? Not remorse, but like humility in the fact that like that is a horrible way to communicate something like that. And
it was perfect for me.
For you, maybe, right. But like that has been kind of the way that I've addressed lots of things through my life, and it hasn't gone as swimmingly as it did with you in that one instance. Because
I just have to pause for 1 second. So I remember I was at a retreat with Don Miguel Ruiz, author of Four Agreements, Mastery of Love, the Art of Life and Death, the Toltec Art of Life and Death. The first encounter with a true mystic. And he was there, and he had his 2 partners there. He'd been married a couple times, and now he decided this was his arrangement. And he was explaining, he says, well, when they're upset with me, I tell them, you're clearly agitated. I would like you to leave and go fix yourself. And I just looked. I just looked at the two girlfriends, and they just like rolled their eyes like, that motherfucker, he does that. And there's this kind of like, it wasn't mean, but there's this kind of like the harshness of the masculine that is not always like super well received, but also he's not wrong, right? Like, we do have the power to master our emotions and master our thoughts. So, but it's difficult to communicate that. And it's also difficult to do it, but you do it better than anybody I've ever met. Like, you're able to actually control your emotions and your thoughts at a pretty impressive level from everything that I've witnessed.
Yeah, I mean, I think, and like I said, I think that's the gap that I have, is my internal experience and my internal mechanisms. Translating that to interpersonal relationships and teaching moments and things like that has been, I would agree with you that I had a pattern, but I also think I inherited a lot of that just from my spirit, my soul, whatever it came in. I was kind of that way, to start with. I can't take credit for like the action steps to develop that. It was just kind of part of my my DNA and my upbringing and my spirit. But then where I've come up really short is like finding the right ways to implement that. I would say in the last, certainly since marriage, but even in my professional career, I had to interact with the politics of the sport, but also the media and all that stuff. And you saw a lot of the fallout there.
You're super fired up about that.
Of me trying to sort of alliterate that stuff in a way. And it just was like falling so flat most of the time, because I think not only is it better transmitted to one-on-one and in a very sort of humble way, which neither of those were the case there, right? It wasn't humble, and it wasn't in a one-on-one. It was in a mass spectrum, and it was also, regardless of my intent, was tied to my station, my successes, my ego, all the other pieces that were present there, right? So you'd be asking a lot for somebody to sort of separate the two and take just the feedback or just the input or just the information without association, right? And like that has been really tough. And I think incredibly funny to do it with kids, because in times they do it just like you did when I said that, like, okay, like I can't go to sleep. Why not? Okay, maybe you're not tired, but nonetheless, there's a way to do it. Maybe you don't know it. Like you can accept and say, I don't know how to go to sleep, but you can't say I can't. Like that's a silly thing to say, because you can, and you will. I can promise you, I can sit here and I will put money on it. As much as you want to bet, I will bet you will go to sleep. Like, so there we have it. And that's like my kids, and Morgan's always like, my wife who's amazing, but she's always like, stop talking to him about that stuff, and I'm like, yeah, I can kind of see. She's like, you're just going to like confuse their brain up. And I'm like, I'm trying to open their brain up.
Right.
Like, and I think kids, especially hearing that stuff young, that's the time before they have all their barriers and things that they think are normal. Like the same thing as a song stuck in your head. It's not that it doesn't happen to me, and I'll find myself in that state. And then I'm like, oh yeah, here it is. Like, let's do it. All right. Who's putting it there, and how do I divert my brain from this repetitious little cycle that it's in where it wants to keep doing it? And my brain is not in charge, and I have to associate, like I have to give it something else to do, and then I can turn down the volume so I can't even hear the thing, anymore. I can still let it do it, but just turn it down to the point where it's, there's no volume. Or the better path is to actually create something else for it to do. And that's the beginning of figuring out how to, like, for me, it was how to alchemize things, really, like, because you're taking one thing, that repetition, it's like, okay, great, repetition's good. Thank you for doing that. Thanks for awakening me to the fact that you want to do something over and over again while I'm doing something totally different, right? I'm doing something, an activity, and you're playing the same stupid song again. So let's do something a little more productive. And you can switch that over and say, okay, we're going to do this mantra instead. We're going to swap that song out for a mantra of I love you, thank you, I'm sorry, some of those mantras that I think are super powerful if you can stay with them long enough, right? If you can really, they don't work, I don't think, if you do it once or twice. It's like you got to have that be in there. So then task your brain with that. Say, all right, here's your song.
Yeah.
And let it roll with that.
I liken this to being like the Beastmaster in a way. And like the body and brain is it's like a wild horse. And you have to be the rider. If you get confused and you think you are the horse, you are the horse,
right. Then
the horse is going to do whatever the fuck the horse is going to do.
And you are the horse.
You are
as
the
soon
horse.
As you think you are.
Exactly. And then, but this lesson that you're saying is like, no, I'm the rider. Like, I'm the rider. This horse is it may act up. That's fine. Like, and we watch the cowboys out here on the right. We're here at the ranch in Sedona. And the horse acts up. They know what to do. They turn them around in circles. They have a protocol. Then they wait. Like, did you learn that?
Yeah.
And that skill, I think, of radical ownership
is
of your whole situation,
and some of it is has to be belief, right? Because I don't think there's a functional way that I've found besides some of the medicines or dealing with some mystics or shamans who can truly show you the dichotomy or the matrix of who you are, where your soul sits, where your mind sits, where your body sits, and kind of demonstrate it. But even that could be, and is in modern sort of world mostly shoved aside, like, oh, you were on some drugs or whatever, so you totally thought these things, and so it takes a leap of faith or a belief system to be like, no, I believe this, even though I can't really tangibly. And I've tried many times to try to walk people through the logic of it. Okay, well, if you hear something in your head and you're identifying it, then who is the you who's identifying it? Right? Like inherently there's two entities there, because if it was just you wouldn't be hearing it. It would be you.
Yeah.
So already you've already understood, or you inherently know that there's two. So then what's the difference?
And the two are in conversation.
Right. And the two are communicating. So, so what are we talking about here? When people are like, no, I'm not, they aren't separate. And I'm like, okay, well, and that's about as far as you get before people start to like get all tweaky and like, I gotta go. I got something to do.
Yeah,
like, right.
This was, I've fleshed out my own model of the self into multiple different parts, and I think it's really helpful. We won't go into it in this podcast, but the captain is that part of the awareness of where you actually identify who you are. Because at a certain point, like imagine when you're being super self-critical. Now, you probably don't do that too much, but I'm sure there's been moments, and everybody can universally recognize that super self-critical voice. Like, you piece of shit, you fucking lazy son of a bitch. You're identifying with the voice that's talking to you and that. So in that point, so I call that part the coach. Freud would call it the superego, right? But you're fused, your identity is fused with that voice. And then the other one is like, I call the captain, which should be in charge, which is like just pure awareness itself, which is saying, oh, wow, look at how the coach is talking to the player, Bode.
Overseeing.
Player is like what I use for ego, because ego implies like hubris and like kind of overconfidence. So to regain the power of the captain, to say like, okay, all right, the coach is talking shit. Maybe coach, like, actually, I'm going to do better if you tell me like, hey, I know it's hard, but you got this. Like, it's going to be difficult, but so you can actually coach the coach to be better. And then you can oversee the whole thing, but you have to fuse your identity with that level of awareness. And that's what allows you to take ownership.
Yeah. Yeah. And the best that I've found is kind of like calling that upper level an emotion sometimes, because everybody has those. That would be like tolerance, forgiveness, love, like just calling them that, instead of calling them, for some people, calling it a captain or separating things as too scary or too weird or too whatever. But if you just recognize that a part of that is everybody has those things. Everybody has some love. Everybody has some forgiveness. Everybody has some tolerance, things like that. And that's what you're saying is like, that's typically the message that helps to bring you up, is like in those moments it's
the best of you.
And in those moments where you're critical, or where you're recognizing that you made mistakes, or that you're just on the wrong path, or whatever it is, like, it's easy to get stuck in there because it feels problem solving, and that's what your brain loves. It loves like the critic, and it loves the that little dynamic and trying to solve something, right? Like whether it's blame, or usually they're not productive, right? It's either like blame or like shame or some other shitty thing like ultimately comes out of it, because it's already typically done at that point, and then but if you just kind of like can move move to the other space in the middle of it, which again takes some discipline. For me, it's like, okay, well, that's what you should do. Like, is this productive? No. Like, you can still look at it, you can still analyze it, you can still dissect it, but you don't need to do it in a critical way, which is what you're saying of coaching the coach, or like telling the coach, like, hey, this isn't a productive way of doing that. Like, get your method, but like, maybe tune it down or make it something better. And that immediately brings you to a better place. And then everything all of a sudden settles, because naturally, to do that, you're recognizing it, and it's just a better place. And I don't think anybody would argue with that. You're like, oh, all of a sudden you're like, you can forgive, you can love, you can tolerate all the things that you're critical of and all those bad things, and then be like, okay, now let's take a look at them. And then it starts to like flow a lot nicer. So
William James, philosopher, he said, he was talking about free will, and he said something that always stuck with me, which was, I don't know if there is free will, but my life is better when I believe there is. And so he approached something where he couldn't actually reconcile where free will comes from. And that's a whole different conversation. But what he did recognize is that if I believe that there is, my life is better.
It's better.
So that is a different type of truth. And the truth is, what is the truth that's going to bring me to the highest version of myself? You know, and I think that's something important. We're so in this scientific, materialist, reductionist. What is actually true, though? But all right, that's one thing. But what is the belief that's going to lead to the best life? Like, you shall know a tree by its fruits. Like, even if the tree is made up, it's an imaginary tree, but it's feeding you and your family and the world. Great. It's a good tree.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Makes no difference.
It's really.
There's a huge amount of surrender within that. And like, I think that's what we were sort of, dancing around for a long time as a species, is like, religion theoretically would make life better, right? It didn't have to have tangible things, but it's the nature of people wanting control to sort of define things. And then ultimately that spawns off people who are more critical of it and kind of take different views of it and want to prove things. And instead of looking at it as simply a system of beliefs that is meant to enhance, and there's plenty of reason to be critical of it, as we know, right? Like, of course. So, but that's the point, is like, they're all spawned from each other, and they all kind of like work together. And I think that's the irony, is that you don't need really any of that. It's simply just a method of like, it's a philosophical system of like, what makes things better? What is the ultimate best path for me? And what do I need to do to get there more often, ultimately? And is there a way to believe that I could live there all the time, right? Where you do deserve to be happy, pleasure in the pleasure love space all the time. And it's just, I think it's naturally difficult for people to believe that. They just inherently have some
life is pain, life is suffering. It's all
whether it's been
samsara,
indoctrinated or whether it's some component of our makeup or our process. I don't know. But
I think there's a lot of fear of hope. There's like a fear of, if you get your expectations that things could be really good, and then it doesn't happen that way, then you'll get bummed. And that was, one thing, just to go back to your skiing, like, you navigated that in a really unique way, because what you expressed to me was like, I don't fucking care if I win. There's a mountain there. And I have the possibility to ski that mountain like that mountain wants to be skied, to ski it like nobody else can ski it. And that was your goal. Sometimes you would win and be like, yeah, that was whack. Always over a chicken tender. There's always a chicken tender involved in the conversation. And then sometimes you would like fucking crash out at the bottom, or like miss a gate, or like whatever else would happen. And you were like, bro,
that was the deal.
Bro, I was fucking on it. That top of that mountain, she's gonna remember my name.
Sometimes only like only one moment too. Like, sometimes it was even less than that. And it sounds, again, the problem with a lot of this stuff is that it's personal. Like, you would get it, but like, most people would think I was full of shit. And it ended up being not hyper productive to even talk about it. I was like,
Well, the culture doesn't support
that.
It doesn't
support
system.
That system at all.
It's all about wins and losses.
It tries to squish that system.
It's like, so did you win? Did you not? Like, that's all that matter. But that's what we're in this world of win-lose metrics, rival risk conflict, me versus you. It's all of this game of tallying the scoreboard. And you're like, no, there's a pure path that you could navigate.
I spent some time at one point. I think you remember Jono, one of my coaches, great dude, really, really good person, good thinker. And I explained it to him one time because he was struggling. It was probably pretty early. It was like it was like maybe 03, something like that. And I came by him, he's got his spot on the course.
Yeah.
And each coach is kind of at a different location, whatever. And they all kind of follow you on the radio. And sometimes they have a monitor, they can see you go, whatever. But the time they experience it is right in front of them. They have their section, other people have other sections, and we go whizzing by. And I had a particularly unbelievable section in his area, crushed, won that section by a bunch, and I wasn't as good as I ultimately became in the execution phase a lot of the time, and went by him, and he was just like, like floored. I pulled off something that, didn't seem possible. The best guys in the race weren't doing, and pulled it off, and in a really kind of buttery way. Like, it was just like made it not even look that difficult, but like, which was unusual for me. And so he really had this super cool experience because he'd been with me since I'd really been crashing a ton. I was really in my growth phase. And this was like the very beginning of when I really started to get things to a place where it was, above the rest of the guys in the world just for moments, but he got to see one of those, and ultimately I ended up blowing out down below and flipping into the fence and was all beat up. And I was talking to him that night, and I was like, so this is the way I view it, is think of just your section, right? Like, if you didn't know what happened anywhere else, say there was no communication, what would you say? Like, who would you say won the race? Or what did I give you? What did I give you as a coach? What happened? What was the whole, interaction? He was like, it was unbelievable. And it looked like there was this crazy cool flow, like almost like the mountain or the snow was collaborating with you. Like, everything was trying to accomplish the same goal. It wasn't just me. I was involved and was doing my part as best I could, but other parts had to also collaborate to make it happen. And I was like, exactly. There we have it. And he was like, huh? And I was like, that's the way I view the whole thing. Like, It's just that moment. And maybe that was just for you, but think of me. I'm the one there. Like, I'm doing it. So if I get one of those moments in a hill or on a moment, even in a bar or talking to somebody or training or whatever, if I get those moments, that's what I'm doing it for. Like, yes, the outcome's fine. Like, sure, hopefully there's progress. Great. But like, there's so many pieces of that you can't really worry about, that in the moment, when you're right there, when you're actually doing the thing, that's what you're searching for, is that moment of like where everything goes together and you give something back and you're in harmony and you're flowing with everything. And people need that. Like, it's good. It's just good. Like, it's good across the board. And the outcome sometimes is sucky, and you have to let that go. Like that, because I could have not done that there and then won. Yeah. And would that have been better? 100% no. Yeah. Right? Like, definitely not. Like, because the people at the bottom, somebody's going to win anyway. So what the hell difference does it make? Like, some people are going to be bummed because one guy won and another guy didn't. Other people are going to be bummed if the other guy wins and this guy doesn't, right? So like, how would you try to build a metric around that which equates to success or not? If you're talking about success for me personally or my coaching staff and team, those are all sort of very subjective. And it was funny as shit to have that conversation. Yeah. He was like, I made him walk through the whole thing. And then I was like, yes. And he was like, no,
that's not what I'm trained for.
No.
I mean, it's a philosophy for life, though. It's like finding, like, we're going to collect the memories of those moments where we were really free, like really in flow, whether it's conversation or whether it's lovemaking or whether it's a sport or whether it's, and like, that's, I think, what we'll remember from this life. But so much of the time we're in our mind worrying about some result rather than in the joy of the process. Moments. Of course.
And that was the challenge. And that's what I tried to do. And you witnessed it sometimes, is like truly recognizing them and recognizing that they're outside the normal metric of what people want to deal with for success or failure, or how to like equate those things and celebrate them and be like, yes, I get it. All this stuff is what you're saying, and that's fine. But this was really good, and like, because if you don't celebrate them, you're missing half the point. It's like they really are special. I can say, because I try all the time and they happen rarely. So like, the more I can make them happen, the better. But I think a lot of that's tied to recognizing them and celebrating them and trying to find them again.
Yeah. I hope you all are enjoying this podcast as much as I am. I want to talk to you about Korrect Life. That's our new supplement company, and we just launched a new product called Fuel. Now, this product combines exogenous ketones, which help give you that mental clarity and actual physical energy, and we combined it with electrolytes and also trace minerals and then a compound that comes from green beans called metabolite, which helps train the body to use your own fat stores as a source of energy. So it's a product that combines many things that we're already probably using. And if we're not, it's great for hydration, great for those pickleball matches, great for long days where you're just rehydrating your body, or even in your morning mineral cocktail. And then we also have, of course, Korrect Energy, which focuses on that caffeine metabolite called paraxanthine, which is really like the spirit of caffeine, and then surrounds it with a bunch of natural extracts to enhance the ability to just be your best self. It's the most subtle and powerful energy formula I've ever felt. And really, these products are the core of what Korrect is all about. And we'll expand from here, of course. We have Korrect Fitness coming down the line soon. But really, this is about how do you have products and information that you can put in your toolkit that will up-level your life every single day so you can be a little better tomorrow than you are today. And that's something that we all need. So if you go to korrectlife.com, that's KORRECT life.com, you can get 15% off your first order. Once again, korrectlife.com. I mean, I was playing pool last night with my father-in-law, and I hit this one shot. I was like a cut shot with like strong left English. So it hit the bank, and it was the only way. My other two balls were locked up in the pocket, so I couldn't have made it. But you can't hit the other ball first. So I like cut it in, banked it off the thing, told everybody what I was going to do, executed it perfectly, hit it, gave myself a good leave. I was just like on fucking fire. And then I go to finish with the 8-ball, and I leave it a millimeter short. It's like, what do I take from last night?
Yeah.
Either the loss, which surely my father-in-law will be talking shit as we play golf today and reminding me of the millimeter short that I left it. However, I'm going to remember that shot.
Yeah.
That shot was fucking dialed.
Yeah.
Like that was the best shot I could hit. You know?
And I think it's worth it to touch on for you know, the audience or whatever, is like a good way to do that is, for me anyway, is, you know, I've always talked about likelihoods or percentages, you know, and like a lot of the time, like when, for instance, golf, you know, the likelihood of making a chip in that Tiger makes, or, you know, a hole in one or whatever these things, it's so small. I mean, it is infinitesimally small. You're talking about wind and all these other variables that aren't just the execution of the shot that you control. There's all these other factors involved as well, including the ground and all these, you know, every little thing. And that shot, if you were to take a hard look at it and see like, what's the likelihood of this happening right now? It's super duper small and not a direct shot, right? Not something that even with your skill level, it's still, there's a lot of stuff there. And that represents you had some other modality coming into play to ensure that the outcome was what it was in that moment. And that's sort of what you're celebrating. It's just like likelihoods are important to recognize in that sense, because it gives your brain a logical framework to think of what happened and to celebrate it, really. Because if you win the megabucks or you whatever, like those are tangible things. You know the odds. The odds are very small. So if you do, you're like, ooh, something went really good there, right? Like, and people would say it's chance, but for the person it happened to, it's actually feels superior to that. You know, it feels like there's something else going on.
There's some kind of coordination.
And that I think is just worth to like look at, because it does happen all the time to smaller degrees. It's only usually when it's super extreme that people will like take the time to think about it and recognize that that was something unusual. You know, it's not just a probability scale of like, oh, something just occurred.
So with this, you know, with this mindset, I'm curious, when you look out at the world and you're watching what people are doing politically or socially and like in all of this, what is your vantage point and attitude towards like where we are as a collective humanity? Like where are your points of optimism? Where are your points of concern? Like what are you seeing when you look out at the world?
I mean, it's dynamic, right? Like there's lots to be encouraged by, I think, in that, I think there's been a general advancement in sort of awareness, call it, and I think awareness is one of the foundation blocks of like raising to a little bit better sort of harmonious species in a way, is like you know, awareness of people, of things, of like we're talking about with your brain, of how things work, of why but at the same time, there's so much discord and there's so much kind of like conflict and stuff. And I tend to feel like, you know, they need each other to a degree. One drives the other, and the other, they morph. But you know, right now, it's strange because the information flow is just so fast, and it can be pretty overwhelming, right? Like even just in my lifetime, you know, went from sort of believing the news and watching, you know, your evening news, which was just on for a little chunk of time in the evening. And you had, you know, Tom Brokaw or Dan Rather or Connie Chung up there, like, you know, telling you the updates of what was going on, to now it's just like infinite sources of you know, information, data, and all seeming like they're conflicting with each other, and nothing's really clear. There's so much noise around that I think, you know, for me, it's discouraging, and at the same time, that drives people to figuring out how to sort through it, right? Like, because if you're just getting a source of information and you trust it, or because of culture or whatever, then that is disenfranchising for yourself in a way. You're taking in information. You don't really have to do the work or think or be critical or understand your truth or find your truth. And now I think we're in a place where most of the world is in the same space that we are, which is tons of information, tons of different stuff coming all the time. And ultimately, there is no single source or methodology to transfer that or sort it and sort of categorize it and make some sense out of it. It kind of automatically drives you internal, and you have to say, okay, what do I believe? What do I think is right? What do I think is true? And ultimately, I think the outcome of that little process for most people will ultimately be, okay, well, what do I want to believe? Which is back to what we were saying. It's like, what do I want to believe, and what I want to believe should make things better, or should make me better at what I want to do in my life and how I live my life. And that's hard to find another. If you were to go back to 30 years and say, okay, how do you influence most of the world to understand that they have the ability to control their belief system, and that they're going to be incentivized or pretty much led by the hand into believing something that makes things better? How would you do that? Right? I wouldn't have come up with flood the zone with shitty information from every different source. I wouldn't have, I don't know. I mean, I think it is a very kind of,
well, there will be a reaction to it. And I think I was recently in Iceland, and in Iceland, there was just this connection with something that was undeniably true. The nature, the land there was undeniably true, unpredictable. You know, it was raining one time, then rainbow, and then freezing wind and rain, and then, you know, perfect sunshine, and then waterfalls and volcanic eruptions. And it was just wild place, but it was all true. It was all true. And I think like inside the body too, like there's all kinds of true things that are happening. Like your heart's beating, blood is pumping, you know, your microbiome is working to disseminate nutrients. Like there's truth that we can find inside of ourselves, especially if we look at the animal, and also if we look outside. And I think that's one of the things that may be the result of this flood of information to the limited capacity of our noosphere, which is just like what our brain can hold. And some people will just get frazzled by that, and they're going to burn out from this. But hopefully, you know, with encouraging voices like no, like leave your phone in your car and go climb up Bear Mountain. You know, like you'll find some truth there. The rocks are true. If you slip and fall, it'll fucking hurt. It's true. You know, like everything there that you encounter outside of your mind is true. And then you can layer beliefs on top of that. All right, is this mountain a spirit? You know, does this carry ancient memories and wisdoms? You know, like one of the things that, you know, Maestro Alejo, who you'll meet, he was sharing is like, everybody's like, oh, the glaciers are melting. And he's like, yes, that's a shame. But also the water, his belief is that the water holds memories. Right. And I think this is a belief that you actually kind of also share, right? The water holds memories.
100%. I think by now it's beyond reproach. I think mainstream six is even understanding that.
Okay. So water holds memories. And some people out there, you might be like, water holds memory? What are you fucking talking about? All right. We're going to just believe this for a second, then what he's saying is that these glaciers have been around since the Ice Age, like at least, for like thousands and thousands of years.
A bunch of water's been locked up for millions of years.
And it's been frozen. And now as it melts, that information is now coming back into the water supply. So to go back into the ocean and then go into the evaporation, into the clouds, and then rain down, and then we drink it out of our water, however we fucking find it. So what he's seeing is a release of ancient information that's now becoming accessible. And we're seeing a flood of this. I mean, we're uncovering new shit underneath the pyramids of Egypt. We're like recognizing new powers of sound and new powers that are available. And like the idea that there wasn't advanced civilization, 10,000 years ago or pre-Diluvian
is crumbling.
It's cooked. Like the idea that Ramses built all that shit, it's cooked. We got Göbekli Tepe, we got all of these things. And so there's like this new memory that's coming online. So, all right, so whether that story's true or not, but that belief is cool. Like, now there's a natural process that Gaia is providing that's going to help correct this kind of deviation that we've been on to be further away from her, further away from nature. We're going to have a collective memory awakening, an anamnesia, so we're like recovering our memory.
And I think it's almost perfectly synergistic with the flooding the zone with information, right? Because as you drive the people internal, they need some hand-holding, right? Some mechanism of what fills that gap, right? Even if it's just from the brain side of things, even if lots of people aren't very spiritual, aren't very in touch with lots of different parts of what we're talking about. But with this release of water and information, which is such a critical element, right? You can't avoid it. Every human on the planet is going to be drinking water. And unfortunately, we've done a lot of damage to our water on the planet. But there's also something very, very elemental about that medium for transmitting information on a mass scale, right? Like, what other medium can you rely on that every single human is going to have to interact with? You know what I mean? So when you talk about how would you affect socially a population as big and diverse as we have on the planet, we're doing that. Not thoughtfully, not consciously, but it's happening. And we're driving people inherently inward because there's too much. There's too much information. It's too conflicting. It's coming from too many sources. There's no way to sort through it. So when that happens for somebody, if it happens sooner or later or consciously or unconsciously, it's going to do it. It's going to, and that's the sort of like the pendulum swinging to one end and then having to swing back because it's just the nature of that. And then you have a mechanism, water, that is inherent to all of us, that we're made of, that has information that helps, that assists that. So they kind of fit perfectly together. And that's really encouraging to me, as well as kind of, from my side, being, having traveled a lot and having access to great people, kind of the groundswell of grassroots support and knowledge and interaction that's happening in so many different places around the same sort of concepts of like, it's ultimately accountability and trust and, some very, very fundamental things that come to as like, well, we can't just, throw caution to the wind and be like, we like hope it works out great. There's some action steps, there's some things. And, ultimately, things get to a tipping point. They get to a place where they get critical momentum and then it changes, and I think, it takes patience, and it's easy, I think, these days, especially with some of the, we won't get into like the, UAP and some of these other outside influences that are clearly have been around post all our written history, have clearly had an impact on our evolution, regardless of what whether you think that's genetically or just knowledge base and influence, because it goes back way too long. And just the nature of it, just thinking logically, even if you're a very inside the box logical thinker, you'd be like, of course that's been around a long time, regardless of what you think it is. There's shit going on that's been there for a long ass time. And that in itself is like, I think can be a crutch, but can also be kind of guardrails or different off ramps of the typical thinking path of like, let's just let the governments do what they do and hope for the best. I think there's naturally systems that have been here were very short-lived, and it's easy to kind of just like want to go out and play golf or do our stuff. But
totally.
There is an accountability component that I think is becoming very common for people to realize that, like, you know, we do need to play our part. We need to fill our role as much as that is. And there's no pressure in a sense, but it's like more a recognition of your obligations as a human, really. I think, you know, it's like, and I think that is spreading, which is really encouraging as well, because there's times where it doesn't feel like that. And right now it is.
You know, one of the big takeaways that I had from my, you know, trip to Iceland was, you know, we were out there and you know, I won't talk about what medicines we're on, but we were out there and we're on some sacred plant medicines, and I was just looking at the beauty of nature, and it just started to make me weep. And it was like, and then I, you know, talked to my teacher, Rebbe Gaffney, about it, and I was like, I felt this undeniable urge once I actually looked at her and saw how beautiful she was. Like, I gotta fight for her. Like, there's an obligation to seeing that level of beauty, you know, and there's old stories about the palace of the king, which is like when you have, and you know, they talk about Iceland being the crown of the father, and because it's a place where you can see how beautiful the earth is, and it's relatively unspoiled, that piece of land. You know, it's been insulated. It's only 300,000 people, you know, like you can drink water from the stream with your hands. It's like this unspoiled beauty. And then to look at it, it's not only do you enjoy it from an extractive sense, like, wow, that was cool. I got a fucking picture, you know, and when I show it to people, they'll go, wow, which is cool. It's fine. I did that. I showed it to people and I enjoyed the wows that I got, and I got to share that. But also there's an obligation. And when you have that obligation, then you have to then say, okay, fuck, but I got so much shit going on. I got kids, I got a job, I got my normal stuff. I don't have the energy. I don't have the juice. And I think that's, you know, one of the reasons why, you know, for people who don't know, Bode was the first money into On It. I came to you with a business plan that I worked hard on. You looked at it like a flip book, like you drew something that had a guy peeing off a bridge on every different page. You looked at it with about that level of speed. And then you're like, you going to do this? I was like,
well,
yeah.
Partly because when we first met in Vegas and talked about it and talked about, you know, your path and what you were doing, to me, it was already kind of clear at that point. And we talked then about the roll on, roll over, some of the original stuff. And I just remember leaving there feeling like I had a really not specific detailed, like I couldn't have written it out, but I had a sort of an understanding of the direction and of my role in it, which was mostly just, you know, lending that little bit of impetus, that little bit of enthusiasm or confidence too. And that was partly it. It wasn't a conscious action of looking through it that way. I would have probably, you know, enjoyed looking through it more, but it was almost like I was doing it out of complete like surrender to what I needed to do at the time and just doing what I did. And it was like, you needed that confidence of like, dude, I'm in 100%. Like there was not even a need to look at that stuff. It was like the belief was already there. And I think that was, you know, I'm sure it probably would have worked had I read through it meticulously and taken it home.
Well, it all ended up being nonsense anyways. So you're actually correct, because the business
the
plan,
point was,
like real life does different things to a business. It didn't feel
like that was part of the important part. It was just the important part was, yes, I 100% believe it, and I know I can feel where this is going, and I want to be on board, and I got your back, and that was
and you know, well, so then that leads us to the second point, which is, you know, I was like, all right, we did On It. It was amazing. It was a movement. You know, we actually like really disrupted the whole category of nootropics with Alpha Brain. It like echoed around the world, and lots of people copied different ways in which you could do it. But performance-based supplements that we proved in double-blind clinical trials, like this supplements fucking do things, and like they're going to affect you in a way that's going to help you be a better version of yourself. But it was very kind of self-focused, and then. But still, we have all those skills. We got the team. And innovations are continuing. I was like, I remember calling you again. I was like, bro, I'm doing it again. You know, I'm doing it again. And we have something that I think is really, really important. And there's actually two products for Korrect. And I was like, this is a big deal. And again, you were like, I'm in. I'm in. And I think, you know, in talking to you further, like, and understanding what the difference is, I think both of us are in a place now where on it was total human optimization. And now it's like, all right, we need to go to total humanity optimization. Mm-hmm. And to get to total humanity optimization, we need a little bit more energy and a little bit more support, you know, to actually be able to bring our best to the world, because everybody's pretty much kind of like maxed out with their energetic reserves. And you were actually like the first person to be on like the keto trend from the start.
Yeah, way back.
Like way back before anybody was talking about it. You go on these like little keto diet moments where chicken tenders were out and all you were eating was like fats, cheese, and fucking, that was it. And you were explaining the virtue of it and benefit. And now finally, you know, I'm starting to enjoy. I'm in ketosis right now, and I'm like super clear, and it feels like incredible. And so, the idea of creating these different formulations that support people, it's just slightly different. It's the same in some ways, but different in that I think we're just maturing. We're getting to a place like you're way ahead of me on the fatherhood journey. I'm coming up behind you quick, but ultimately, like, we gotta do something, you know. I mean, it's beautiful to believe like God will provide. Yes, God will provide through us.
Right. You gotta do your part.
You gotta do your part. It's like through us and beyond us. And, you know, so I think that's the, you know, even for people asking me like, why are you doing this again? And I think it's really become clear. And sometimes you do things you don't even know exactly why. And now it's like, oh no, this is really clear. Yeah. Like the people who can do something, like we need to. And if that thing is, the can do something is just a little more attention that you can give to your children, or a little more attention you can give to your partner, or a little more attention you can give to a prayer that you wouldn't have, you know, because you have that energy, you have that edge, or you have that fuel, you know. Yeah. Like we need it. We need a little extra effort. This feels like fourth quarter.
Right.
Not in a rapturist type of way, like the world's going to end, but it's fucking fourth quarter.
Yeah. It's time to sort of, take that accountability. And, you know, I think I talked to you about it after losing my daughter. One of the ways that I tried to alchemize the grief or the, you know, all the emotion there was to put it into my kids. Right. So I could take that grief and process it as it was and realize it and do all that. But then it's something that stays with you forever. Like I can still bring myself to tears at any moment I want to. And therefore, I know I have this massive reserve of sort of, whether it's sadness or it's just, I call it just energy, because they're all the same thing, right? You can take that energy and immediately switch it into, okay, let's go do the thing with my kids. Let's go jump on the trampoline. I don't know, you're a little younger than me, but jumping on a trampoline when you're in your late 40s is like not how it was when you were in your teens. I was like, oh yeah, I'll jump on a trampoline. I got there and I was like, oh God, I feel like a weeble wobble, like every bunch of things stacked on top of each other loosely, and like it is rugged. But there's those moments, and again, as just to sort of put some context to what you're saying, is like when I get up, I take my Korrect, and I, you know, in a way, because I know it's that ritual for me that says I'm committing to doing the extra stuff today. You know, today I'm going to do the extra stuff. Today, when I'm going to, you know, feeling like I just want to chill on the couch and watch some TV or do nothing. Yeah. I'm going to get my ass up and I'm going to spend that time with my kids. I'm going to invest that little extra. And everybody has that, right? And there's nothing wrong with taking your time or resting or, you know, chilling. But if you want to take accountability and see if you can make an impact, you know, raise the bar that little bit, right? And it's in a very external way for me. And I think it's, I don't know if it's because of the name. I don't know if it's just because of the iteration or the evolution naturally of myself, but you're exactly right. On it was very much like for me. It was like when I wanted to perform better, when I wanted to feel sharper, when I wanted to do something, but I didn't necessarily feel the direct link or the storyline in my head that I was going to be putting that out for other people. It was internal. It was for me. And with Korrect, it definitely feels like I'm doing it to make a better impact on my surroundings, so that I can do the extra work around the house, with enthusiasm and take things off my wife's plate, or just engage in a way, a little bit more intensity, a little bit more effort, a little bit more empathy. And I think that is part of it, is like, even if it were just psychosomatic, I think it would be hugely beneficial, right? Just like having some mechanism, whether people have that, maybe it's a little meditation or it's some other thing where they say, all right, now it's on. I'm going to go out and I'm going to go make the extra effort. And sure, there's an internal benefit, but the intent there is really powerful as well. And I think with Korrect, I obviously got my family on it, and that's because I understand very well the nature of that kind of like equilibrium lifestyle that New Hampshire particularly has. Like, people aren't trying to climb a social ladder. They're not trying to, one up. They're not trying to get a better car or move to a new house. People grow up and they're born in the house, they live there, they die there, their kids take it over. Like, it's just the nature of that place. And your energy systems tend to equalize to that, right? It's like homeostasis. Everything tries to find its balance. And so your body produces the right hormones and energetic level to do what you normally do.
Right.
And if you're going to ask it to do more, you could do that just out of the blue if you were just committed to it. And theoretically, over time, your body would adjust and you might eat a little bit more food. You might do, take on some new habit, but ultimately you could do that. But I love the concept of Korrect being that ritual, being the process itself. Like, you take it, and that the process of doing something physical, like unpacking it out of its thing and eating it, is enough to cue your brain like, okay. And that's what I think we've maybe missed up to this point, but I want to make a conscious effort to push forward, because ultimately, whatever people want to do, whether they want to take Korrect or not, like, that mechanism, find something that's physical that like cues you, like, okay, this is my cue. Now it's time to go out there and put that little extra into people, to reach out to somebody who I would love to talk to, but just don't do it regularly, or, talk to your family or whatever it is, but like cue that. And if we can figure out how to do that en masse, then I think we make a massive impact, because one of the gaps right now is in connection. It's in community, right? We're all disparate, and we're all kind of like, we've been on a path for a couple hundred years of kind of separating from the tribe, where the tribes used to be
sovereignty.
tight.
Yeah. I mean, sovereignty was something that was so rare back in the day. Like, everybody was tribally related. And now, with the way that our economies are set up, we can actually be isolated and just have Uber Eats and, Amazon orders of your Whole Foods come in, or however you want to do it. You can basically not have to leave the house at all. And you can just be a totally autonomous unit. But that's not healthy for us. That's not the way.
It's not the ticket.
Interestingly, so like the name Korrect came from a couple different sources. Like the name On It came from you when you were saying like, man, I was on it. Yeah. And it was like, all right, this is what it means
I still use it all the time. And I find myself using it all the time. And I'm like, man, that was good branding. Excellent branding.
So, and that's what it really meant. It meant about you personally performing at your best, and largely for you, and that's really our mindset there. And with Korrect, it came about partly because we have, our partner in here is Brendan Schaub, and he says Korrect all the time. And that's when it's like facts,
right?
Like, this is real. This is true in whatever sense, whether it's an idea, it doesn't have to be like statistically true, but like correct. Like, that's the correct way of thinking. And then it even got deeper for me recently. I read this, really intense, book called Not in His Image. It's a book on the Gnostics. And their story of humanity is that we've been on a path of what they call anomia, which is a deviation. Like, we've deviated from the natural way, which is deep connection to the divine feminine, deep and reverence, and deep connection to the earth, which are inextricable, right? So that part of our deviation has to be corrected. And so he proposes this idea of Sophianic animism, Sophia being the consciousness of Gaia, like coming back into right relation. And I think that's ultimately in this. And so now I'm thinking about the word correct. Yes, it had, a partner's, thing that he said all the time. And then the K came from ketosis, because we knew we were going to make a ketone product. And I was also a way to brand it. But now I'm thinking, and again, like, I do these things all the time, and I don't know why.
And realize later, I'm like, oh, fuck. Like, that was like, and so to correct the anomia, the deviation, we need
the extra energy and fuel to actually do it. And we got to still do it, but nonetheless, like it's time to actually come back to where our, best trajectory as a species could be.
Yeah. The most sustainable, most, sympathetic too.
And it's like also the most fulfilling.
It's just better, period. But like, yeah, I agree with you. And I think it's a lot of this stuff's the chicken or the egg, like, can you think about it and then do it? Possibly. Some people can. Do you need extra fuel? Yes, probably. Like, you do, regardless of whether you can produce that through other foods or practices or whatever. But this all kind of fits. It fits really nicely. And I love it when shit kind of comes together, because to me, it represents a collaborative effort of, and I've said it to you a bunch, when your path's right and your intention is good, the universe will conspire to make something happen. It's from, The Alchemist. But when I read all those, I read The Alchemist when I was really young, and I remember being like, whoa, it's almost like I could have written this, like certain things that I felt and thought that I was associating at that time with thinking, but really it was just, already there. It was information, right? Like my brain was just a little antenna that was taking in information that had been there forever. That was just really good, solid, fundamental things, right? Sayings, knowledge, wisdoms. And as I see those reproduced, that is kind of the body of it, is that when you're doing something that aligns with the true path, right? The best version of things, even though we're all over the place at various times, that if you're doing that with intention and with the right sort of motivation, that inherently things conspire, right? I think it would be actually pretty damn hard for us to really take a deviation that went completely sideways, because ultimately there would be so much pushing us back, inherently. It would activate in people. It would become these undeniable impulses for people to do things like, and I think it has happened throughout history, right? Where things start to go totally sideways, and there's just this universal force of kind of like wanting to, I wouldn't call it harmony, but it's something like harmony. It's really like it tries to bring you back to the right path. And I feel like there's so many different components of that. And I love it when, I can kind of get a loose sense of it when it's happening, at various times where I'm like, yeah, shit's conspiring right now. There's more at work here than I want to do my part as best I can, and other people are going to do their parts. But we also are getting assistance from outside that's kind of helping to amplify.
Yeah. It takes a lot more energy to push out a lie than it does to tell the truth. Like if you're just telling the truth, it's relaxing. If you're like not worried,
you can let it ride.
Yeah.
There's no need to
exactly
overextend it or overdo it.
But to keep a lie going, and to like keep keep a deviation going.
And it gets worse and worse.
And then you have to enforce it ultimately with violence or anger. And that's what happened to a lot of the Gnostic traditions in these places where they're like, yo, like we don't need these codexes of rules. Like we go to the mystery school, we take the medicine, in Eleusis, they had a part of the ritual was they would hold a handful of cut wheat, and they would show, the initiates, and there's very little written about it. So we don't know exactly, but we think that it's a psychedelic ergot that was actually like a lysergic acid. So like an LSD analog that came from the wheat, but ultimately they would hold this cut amount of wheat in their hand, and they would show like, this is our state of separation. And then they would then point them to the fields where the wheat was just growing, and they were saying like, what we have to do is reconnect ourselves back to the soil, which has the rain and the sunlight. And so it's a reconnection process, but this thing is going to happen because like the energy flow moves most smoothly when it's that way. And all of these other deviations, they create neuroses and psychoses and all kinds of discord that's wasting a lot of energy. Like we want a homeostatic, equilibrium. And to be in equilibrium requires that we're actually in the flow of life. And I think all of these deviations have moved us from the flow of life, and we're just wasting all this energy. So when people get back into that and find the joy of that, and then actually it just comes alive.
Yeah, I want to find the book or have somebody write it about the idea and do it really like, because I think once they find the right channel of what they're getting, they won't have to like think it up, right? But the idea of waking up with that like sparkle and zest, like literally waking up from a sleep and having that like electricity going around your skin and just like lit up, almost like you don't have to stand up. Like you can just come up from a sleep to a functional position with no effort. And like that, I think, is when we're right on the path, right? Like it's like when you see, certain animals at certain times, the way they interact with their stuff is so effortless. Like the way they do it, right? Even their escape from prey or their like, their food and all this stuff is just like there's no wasted energy. They're not spending time doing something else. There's no deviation from their true path. And I think I feel like there's a book out there. I've never heard of it, but I feel like somebody's written it at some point, and I'm trying to find it. So if you have any ideas, let me know. But it's basically like that concept of like, imagine what it could be, right? Yeah. Imagine what your life could be if it was like as magical and as pure and as aligned and like as it could be, where you just like, you wake up and poof, and like, the energy flow and the information flow, like, okay, what am I gonna, it's not even what am I gonna do today? You're just totally sensing everything and just.
That's the return to Eden. That's the coming of the kingdom, where, behold, I make all things new. I mean, this is the Yeshua's revelations, like, behold, I make all things new. Like, see through my eyes. Yeah,
where you rise and you see like, everything.
Oh,
yeah, you see everything
God.
Almost like for the first time, and everything is amazing and magical, and your energy is just like you're giving that kind of feeling. If you think about it, to be around somebody who was feeling that would be ecstatic, right? Like if you were around somebody who was like literally seeing the beauty of trees and mountains for the first time, taking in big breaths of clean air and just like enjoying the whole thing, you would be ecstatic just being around them, let alone if you were contributing and resonating with that. Like it would just be, so yeah, I'm searching for the book.
Well, that was, I referenced Don Miguel Ruiz as the first mystic, like true mystic that I've ever encountered. And still, probably the strongest impression. And it wasn't because of what he said. He said some, things I thought were cool. And he has a lot of wisdom. The Toltec tradition is full of a lot of wisdom about intent and the clarity of your intent. And also the magic of how, when you place your intent on something and you're really focused on it, how that will actually create the results. So a lot of beautiful teachings in there. And, their idea of becoming the Nagwal, the one who can see and have an intent so clear that the intent becomes manifest, so they have beautiful teachings, love the teachings. But what I really loved was to see the fruit of that tree. Because I watched him. I was there with him for a week. Every single day, the sunset was about the same sunset. There wasn't like one that was more significant than the other. They were all beautiful. But no matter who was trying to talk to him or whatever was going on, he'd have his glass of house wine and he would look at the sunset and he would look at it with just the awe of like a young child who was like beholding a splendor that was so beautiful. And I'm looking at the sunset going like, wow, it's a good sunset. But like, he's looking at it like, oh my God, this is the most incredible thing I've ever seen. And he repeated that night after night after night. And it didn't diminish. It was the same. He saw with fresh eyes, behold, I make all things new. Every day he woke up, behold, I make all things new. It was like fucking crazy. Yeah. It was crazy to experience that. And then that gave me this idea, oh, that's possible. This is a flesh and blood guy. He's gotten divorces. He's fucking lived his life. He had a stroke or something that put him in the hospital. He's got, his challenges with his kids. He's got a normal, but he's found this way that every fucking night he can drink house wine and look at a sunset and just be blown away. Like, fuck, that's so cool.
Yeah.
Like,
it's a super powerful. It's along the lines of what we started the whole conversation of talking about, of like ownership and understanding like, okay, then why would you not do that? Right? Yeah. Why would we not take that on? And all it is lack of attention, lack of discipline, lack of ownership, like acting like, oh, that's somebody else's job, or like I just don't appreciate the sunset. And acting like that's just how it is, as opposed to being like, wait a second, that's me. I'm the one. I'm the one who can do that. Yeah. And like, it is. And I mean, certainly, like I said, my whole approach comes with a healthy dose of humility, because I recognize stuff like that all the time. Like, yes, I identified for you you should have ownership over not playing a song in your head over and over again. If you don't want to. If you want to, have at it. But like if you don't want to, don't act like it's somebody else's thing, you know? And at the same time, I'm coming up, you know, empty on lots of different areas just like that of like, you know, and I do try and I do practice, and it is my intent to ultimately try to get there where it's like you really can bring that, because as I said, just being, if that's something I can give to my kids, to my community, to the people that are around me, of radiating that appreciation for what we have, what we are, and how we live, then I think that's a really good pursuit to try to go for. And I don't see it as particularly challenging, except in the context of like distraction and regular shit that like ultimately doesn't seem to mean that much to me. So.
And it's proof of possibility, right? Mm-hmm. When you challenged that, the idea that a song stuck in your head was just a psychological trope, that this is what happens. And then you challenged that, and we were close enough where I knew that you were for reals, that you can actually do it. And then I was like, oh, well, fucking Bode can do it. You know, like, I can do it. And then when I saw Don Miguel, it was proof of possibility. Well, fuck. Like, if he could do it, like, I can do it. Now, I don't know how exactly, you know, and then you have to figure out the how. You have to be in the pursuit of the how. But the proof of possibility is so important. I mean, obviously you see it in sports, like the double backflip is impossible. One person lands it, then everybody lands it the next fucking games.
Well, and that's, you know? I think there's a little side note there of like this concept of the universe being information, right? Informational, and from mass, information having mass, and you know, they've all kinds of crazy, stupid scientific things like, you know, a specific computer will solve a certain problem in a certain amount of time, and then the second time you operate that same computer, it can be across the world or whatever, but the second time, even starting over with no new information, it's quicker to solve the same problem, because the information there's no other explanation for it except that the information's already there. It's just, it doesn't have to do the same work that it did the very first time. And I think that's a cool thing to understand, in the sense of like, yes, I brought awareness to the information, right? That was possible. But what I think we need to get to is like, it's already there probably, you know? And we need to sort of release that, like the need to see proof or the need to have the thing, you know, just use imagination and be like, okay, like, do I believe that it would be good to worship the sunsets? Yes, I do. Yeah. And as you read your story about the bird, like, is it worth it to both have the annoyance and anger and believe that and understand it, and then have the moment of forgiveness and appreciation for the beauty of a bird and the fact that it's doing its thing, and you need to find harmony with that, right? Like, those are all really good beliefs. Could you believe something different? Certainly, but it should be at least somewhat pointing towards making things better, right? Like, and that's the sort of the guiding point, is like, and it can be different for other people, but like, if you think that belief is making things better, then you shouldn't have to rely on other people to tell you about it first. Is kind of the gist of it. But it is hard. I'm in the same boat. So
there'll always be pioneers that are actually like pushing the boundaries of what's available in the collective, and I think that's where my own deep appreciation for Yeshua comes in. Like, he, in the final moment of test, you know, like, Father, why have you forsaken me? You know, like, what the fuck, man? I'm on a cross. Like, I've been like doing the most, you know, like, and here I am. And then in his final moments, he's like, you know, forgive them, for they know not what they do. And like, I'm basically in his nake nula waung moment. I'm ready for whatever's next. He just releases all of that. And so that story of somebody who, you know, I think and maybe there was many others before him, and old Buddhas and Atlanteans and other ascended masters, but I think they pave a pathway that we can all kind of like ski behind, you know, like they cut the fresh powder, and then we're like, oh, that's fucking skiable. There's fucking tracks on this. And so all of us will get to touch our own little fresh powder moment where we're adding something, contributing.
I think everybody does. I mean, I don't mean to say that all the information's there. By no stretch is it. There's every person, every thought has the ability to contribute in one way or another. If nothing else, then just from perspective, right? Because perspective does matter, right? Like, yes, there are true facts and things, but perspective is a new piece of information that you're contributing. So no doubt that's happening as well. But I just think the imagination, as much as, you could sort of debate the concept of imagination or whatever, like whether it's you're tapping into other information or it's actually just, a cognitive process or something like that. But imagination is demanded right now. It's needed. You need to start to use it, and like adults need to use it. We don't use our imaginations that often, but imagine what needs to happen. Imagine what you need for your life. Imagine what interactions could happen with your kids, with your spouse. Imagine but use the positive side. Imagine how good it could be, and then use that as your guiding,
And these are old schools of thought. Like, again, reading this book on the Gnostics, which takes from the Nag Hammadi scrolls and the Dead Sea Scrolls and the information that was preserved and really uncovered in like 1947. They found these like in sealed fucking mason jars, or not mason jars, whatever, urns. And
ball jars.
Yeah.
It's an old company.
And but they had, so the leaders of the Gnostic movement were called telestai, and telestai comes from telos, which is direction. They were pointing a direction, and they were here to point a direction. And one of their most powerful tools in pointing that they would try to impart on people was something called epinoia, which is imagination. Like, so you have a direction, and then you use your imagination to kind of fill in the gaps as to like how to get there. And I think that's these basic principles, like we're missing this from our schooling.
Yeah, our culture does not support it, and that's an issue. We gotta solve that, and then tell people like, look, have an aim, and then use your imagination, and then know that you can control your own mind and thoughts, and get yourself, take responsibility for your life, and do your best. And if you go out on your shield, not having succeeded, you've already succeeded. Yeah. That's the secret wisdom of the Spartan with my shield or on it. It was like, I'm going in this direction. I don't know what the outcome will be. Either I'll be a victorious warrior or I'll be carried on home on my shield. But it regardless, like I know what the direction I'm going. And that's what's within our control. And it's freeing too. I think that's a component of it. That's really, it's nice because it gives you the accountability. It gives you the power, right? It's taking back some of the parts that have been, systematically removed from the individual, right? It's like, as we've tried to become individuals and separate and do all this stuff, a lot of that is because you want ownership, right? And forgetting that the ownership is actually in the collaboration, but in your interaction with the collaboration. Like if you're totally solo, just logically, if you go solo and you're out in the woods in your own little cabin, getting all your stuff from Amazon, like, and you're making your own decisions, sure, you're independent, you have your autonomy and but the impact on everybody else is zero, right? If you're walled in. Like it's zero. Yeah. And if you're just that person who's out there in the midst of things, you're at least having influence on everybody else. You're making a contribution regardless of whether positive or negative. So, there's that disenfranchised mentality of the individual right now is pretty strong. We're individual and we feel like we have big ownership and power in that individuality, but it's disenfranchising in the sense that like, there isn't the connection that shares it, that contributes, that gives you the fulfillment, right? And the fulfillment's kind of pretty low right now as a species of like really getting that. And I think
disconnection from fellow humans and disconnection from the earth, right? Like both. How often do we thank this when the sun's beating on us? So we're like, thank you, sun. When we get a draft of cool water.
There was we were at a Benson Boone concert the other night. Yeah. And this woman that I just had met is friends with my wife and whatever. And she came with us. We picked her up. She was just in her car. She parked, picked her up, she hops in. She's kind of like bubbly, divorced, just recently divorced now. And is like totally realizing that like, she's like, this is my body. Like she tattooed her. She had as a tattoo of like some, like a dandelion thing that you blow, and like make a wish. She's like has here, so she blows on her arm all the time, makes wishes and shit. She's comical, but she's great. And in the middle of the Benson Boone concert, we're like on some, some different substances or whatever. And she's like, his voice is just so powerful and so amazing. This is really nice of him to do this for us, for him to sing for us like this. And I was like, yep, that is true. We did have to buy a ticket, and he is making millions of dollars to do this. But at the end, it is very nice of him to share what he's sharing, right? Like his passion, his voice, his because when he sings, he lets it go. It's pretty badass. And you get that sense. And it was just awesome to see somebody, an adult, really recognizing that like he could make that noise anywhere, but to do it in the midst of people like that truly is a sharing process. And there's something really magical and special and in truth, very kind of him to do. And I'm sure it's amazingly fulfilling for him. Like it's a win-win. And that's a model that would be well served to follow.
It's a psychological fact that one of the best ways out of depression is to help somebody else. Just a fact. Like we know that. But like applying that is something else. Like there's a deep satisfaction in service. Like you're like the most satisfied actually when you're giving your gifts.
The bubble that creates around, we had this conversation the other day, the bubble that comes around you when you're into a depression or where it isolates you in such a strange way. And that bubble can seem impenetrable. I know from losing a kid, like as soon as you go into this, weird place where it feels like there's no way out, but one of the things that just pops that bubble effortlessly is pure love intent, something positive, something helpful, to not self-serving at all, the opposite of self-serving, something that is for other people or whatever, whether it's something small. And that was the magic of our situation, was we had all these little kids around still. And so you felt obviously obligated. It just would effortlessly pull you out of that isolated bubble of grief or sadness or depression or whatever it was. And that thing just becomes more and more intimidating the longer it lasts. But nonetheless, at any point, no matter if it feels like it's this thick and made out of, that special rubber that they use for your cell phone covers that can't be pierced, like effortlessly, as soon as your intent is to help somebody else or do something positive for somebody else, which is totally inconceivable in some ways in your brain at that time, right? It just becomes completely like the furthest thing from obvious. But if you can do it, it goes straight through it. It's effortless, and it takes you immediately out of it. And I think it's, we're in a place now where that's an epidemic of sadness, depression, isolation, and those bubbles are around a lot of people right now. And trying to create that general knowledge base, just basic stuff of like, hey, if you want to, I know it might sound weird, but you don't have to come up with that on your own, because that is hard in that state. It is really hard to come up with. I was gifted in that I had littles demanding things. And so doing that automatically was like, whoa, it was like literally like the light looked different, because in your bubble, the light is dim. It's grim in there. And as soon as you do something, all of a sudden it's like you just popped your eyes awake a little bit and you're like, whoa, the world's still good. There's still a lot of great stuff. And all of a sudden everything just shifts. And I'm hoping that we can, use everything that you're doing, everything I'm doing, the business Korrect and everything is not just a physical pill or a packet to do. It's actually a modality to create, a movement around information, and a storyline there that there is solutions, and we want to be a part of the positive side of that.
Let's fucking go, man. Let's fucking go. Buddy, I love you, bro. For real. There's not a day that I'm not grateful, man. Because I felt really alone before I met you, honestly. And
I remember. I had my moments too.
Yeah.
It was it was the right thing, the right time.
It was. It's changed my life forever. And you're going to be, walking out at my wedding as one of my groomsmen now. And
I'm excited about it.
There's a lot more to come. And it's just, thank you, God, for that moment. Because there's a random fucking serendipitous
very
moment
random.
with a lot of whiskey in Vegas club. And, but it's changed my life and those blessings that you've offered to my life. And, I know I've offered some in return to your life as well, like they'll echo for eternity.
Yeah.
And I'm looking forward to one day being able to take my kids over to hang with Uncle Bode, because they'll already have the stories, like, this dude's a fucking legend. Just pay attention. Pay attention, and they probably will, even more than your kids.
100% more.
But the trip to Uncle Bode will be and Auntie Morgan. That's going to be a fun thing that I look forward to in the future, bro. So
there's a lot to look forward to.
Yeah, man, there is, and a lot to fight for.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We love you guys. Thank you, Bode. Anything else? You doing anything else you want to point people to in this?
I'm always doing stuff.
It's not really your thing.
Just one. Let's make it good, man.
Let's make it good. Let's make it good. Let's make it good for our kids. Let's make it good for our kids' kids and our fucking kids' kids. And let's make it good for everybody.
Yep.
That's the game.
Thanks for tuning into this video. Make sure you hit subscribe. Follow me at Aubrey Marcus. Check out the Aubrey Marcus podcast, available everywhere. And leave a comment. Let me know if this video resonated or what else you would like to hear from me in the future. Thank you so much.